or just a stroppy old woman. So guys, today what I'm talking about is shared decision making. And we're going to talk about I've been sound out because I'm currently signed in on another device. Is that right for everybody else? What was everybody else seeing?
No, I mean, it is fine.
Oh, it's fine. Okay, that's fine. So guys, I'm going to be talking about Ready, Steady, Go and Hello, delivering patient empowerment, shared decision making and transition. And as I said before, Katrina's talk is really, really powerful. It's been, it's 2019, that article in the BMJ came out, and we've got nice guidance that's come out. Some of you will be familiar with this, and it's the babies, children and young people's experience of healthcare that came out last year, the guidance. And there was a shared decision-making guidance for adult services that also came out last year. There was the personalized care agenda that came out in 2019, and that is mainly aimed for adults, and it's about empowering patients. And I'm going to show how all these actually all link in together. And there's also transition consensus statements. And we're just going to say how this talk and the day, I think, is going to meet most of these documents. So it's all well and good having the documents, but the question is, have you heard about these documents? And I don't know. I had hoped to do some Slidos on this, but we might not be able to do it just yet, but that's fine. So this is the children's, babies and young people's healthcare experience guidance that came out. And what they're talking about is it's about empowering the patient. It's about providing information that's relevant to them. So health literacy comes in here as well, and making sure that they're involved with their decisions. And also the one at the bottom also talks about transition and making sure that they're supported and they're still able to do their usual activities. And all those in dark blue, those bands, show that there are nice guidance and recommendations out there. So this is a beautiful, beautiful guidance and really, really simple. But when you go back to these, you say, actually, it's the same sort of stuff that's been coming out over the decades. And I'll show you that as well. So lovely recommendations. And what those recommendations do is, when you look at the personalized care agenda here, it's actually the recommendations they make for adults echo those that are made in the nice guidance for the babies, children and young people, because what it shows is that anybody with a long-term condition, actually, they have the same issues and concerns that need addressing. And only about 10% are disease specific. I can't do much with the health budgets because I'm rubbish with money, but you guys, other people own that. But these are the sorts of things that we'll be covering today in the talk. And then for some of you, there's the GMC consent document. This is for the doctors in the audience, is that actually it's decision-making and consent. Now, this came out in November 2020. And what I will say is that the recommendations is shared decision-making is key, and they have 7 standards, and we really ought to be following them. And that really is about involving the decisions, involving patients in decisions and making sure that they understand what shared decision making is and they understand the choices. And we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. And what I did was, this is where I had planned to poll you, but sorry, I do apologize. I forgot to stick the QR code in here, but we will get the QR code up and running for the during the coffee break. And what I'll do is we'll put some questions in there just to see who's in the audience and what the answers would have been to these. But do remember what your answers are now, and then at the end of the talk as well. And what I will say is, I've been to a number of talks, and I've given this talk in a few places, is actually, do not be beating yourself up. When I've asked people, only, I'm going to say, less than 10% knew about the NICE guidance and the personalized care agenda. And probably about 10 to 15% knew about something called Ask 3 Questions that we'll be talking about it. So don't look at yourself and say, seriously, or look at anybody else. If you don't come across it and it's not being disseminated, it's very, very hard. So it's great having these recommendations, but unless you've got the tools to implement them, it's not going to happen. And we are incredibly busy, so it needs to be simple. And I'm hoping that Ready, Steady, Go and the tools that support it can deliver on that. So that was going to be the slider, but we're going to forget about that. And in fact, we're going to forget about it so much, it's not even going to let me move to the next slide. It's not letting me move, James. I've got my lovely techie guy coming. I'm just resigned that, the gods are against me. I've got shingle. Well, I've had shingles and I'm in pain, and this is what I have to deal with. Sorry, guys. And the panel here are laughing at my discomfort and distress. So that's perfect. Lovely. Okay, so what we're going on that. So now, guys, what you will love to see is actually, this is what Paul Roberts was also saying, was that when you bring them all in together, they're all saying the same thing: the nice pathways, the personalized care agenda, the transition service specifications, and now there's this new thing called the integrated care boards. If you're in the audience, that is lovely to have you on board, but there might have been called strategic clinical networks in the past. And then they talk about quality improvement. And these are the big areas that we're going to be covering today. And I picked these up in the, so it's about shared decision-making information that we'll be talking about. We're talking about maintaining usual activities, social prescribing, we'll talk about that as well, and also transition. And we're going to start off with transition, and then we'll lead on to those. We'll have a break after the transition for questions, and then we'll do some shared decision making, and then we'll have a coffee break. Okay, so this is the article that we've just been speaking about, and these are the things that Kathana said were really, really important to her. And as I said, you know, transition is what we're familiar with. You know, it's been around since the 1990s. This was a definition by the American group. And it said it needed to be a process that addresses medical, psychosocial, and educational and vocational needs. But what does it really mean? To me, what it means, it's about empowering the patient. It's about equipping them with the knowledge and skills to manage their condition, both in children's and adult services. It's about introducing the young person to the adult team, but in a timely manner, just like Katana said, and making sure that the adult service have the knowledge and skills and the support resources to accept the young person as well. So, and these are the themes that we'll be talking about. And often people say, actually, we're doing transition. And what they're doing is they're introducing them to the adult team as a hello, goodbye clinic. That is not transition. That is transfer. So it's really, really important, because without patient empowerment, you are not transitioning your patients. And you think, well, is it really important? Well, we know it's important, because we know that when young people go from children's to adult services, there is an increase in morbidity and mortality. The diabetes group in 2002 in the north of England, and it's not unique to diabetes, showed that in pediatric services, over 90% were attending adult pediatric services. But actually, by the time 2 years into adult services, that had dropped to 57%. Now, these stats are echoed across subspecialties, and I know that they're echoed in the renal service, in asthma, in diabetes, across the board. So we're not getting it right. And with this, there's worsening of disease control, and also a worsening of an increase in mortality as well. Same was true with the congenital heart diseases. They found that actually their children that weren't surviving before were surviving into adult services. But my Lord, they had a 20% increase in, in death, well, not 20% increase in deaths. What they said was there's an increase in mortality, and they thought 20% of those were avoidable, which is really, really worrying stats. And the same is true for the hydrocephalus group and for the kidney transplants. Alan Watson's group from Nottingham, if there's any people from kidneys will be familiar with this, 1 in 3 lost their kidney transplant within 3 years of transfer to an adult service. And of those 8 that lost it, the group that were transferred, 7, it really shouldn't have happened. And what the next thing is that shows is it's not a UK problem. This is an international problem. So this is some work from the Canadian group that looked at their kidney transplants. And guys, it's not all about kidneys today, so do not panic. We're just using this as an example because that's where our expertise lies, some of us. They found that 1 in 4 lost their kidney transplant within 2 years of transfer to an adult service, but with no transition. But with a transition service in place, that dropped down to 0%, showing the power of a good transition program. And the program that they use is based on the Vancouver model, and that's what the Ready, Steady, Go model is also based on. And then this just shows, actually, and this was an article just a couple of years ago, again, things are not changing, is that, and this is not unique, as I said, to kidneys, is that in young adults between the ages of 14 to 23, fewer were attending than the older adult patients, and we'll talk about that in a second. And also that, again, related to their disease, just like the diabetes group, that they had more emergency related emergency admissions related to this as well, compared to the general population. And this is really worrying data. And so if there are people, commissioners in the integrated care boards, you need to take notice of this. So this meant that within 10 years of a kidney transplant, they were more likely to go back onto dialysis. And this really does, one, reduce quality of life and patient experience, but the impact it makes on resources on the NHS cannot be emphasized. So we need to be doing something about this. Not only that, that's from the medical side, but what we also know is that, patients with a long-term condition have double the mental health issues compared to their well peers. And these percentages will have increased and worsened during the COVID period, and more are also unemployed. So it's all well and good that we're making them survive into adult services, but what we're not doing is we're not making them into successful adults. And this information and this data is true across all subspecialties. It might be 30 or 40%. It's whether you've got a learning disability, diabetes, cancer. So even the ones that are really well supported have these issues. So we need to be doing something about that. And what we do know that these issues that they face in adult services, many of them stem from pediatric services because we haven't got it right. And these are the issues. They're depressed, they're anxious, low self-esteem and professional restriction. So we need to be doing something about that. And I'm going to touch upon this now, but we'll talk about this later in the talks as well during the day. So we had this peer project, which is some youth workers, and it's charity funded because this is not commissioned within the NHS at the moment. And what they do is they foster an I can do attitude. And this relates to social prescribing that will be talked about later by Esther, I think. So yes. So going back to transition, as I said, lots and lots of transition service specifications. This is one from 2011. This is the kidney one. But last year, there's one from congenital hearts from 2021, echoing what was said in the transition service specification from 2011, also echoing what was said by Blumenthal in 1993. And what this document has done, it's got Ready, Steady, Go uploaded as a supplement, because this is the program that they are recommending internationally as well, showing the power of the Ready, Steady, Go program. So I hope that you guys have got that. You guys have clocked that, and it's been voted the best transition tool out of 11 tools from 2016. So, and when you read the best practice statements, this is what I'm just saying again, just to echo, it doesn't matter whether it's cancer, it's mental health, diabetes, sickle cell, they say the same thing, showing that the majority of issues facing somebody with a long-term condition are the same regardless. And it's only about 10% of disease specific. So you can use the same transition program for everybody. Now, what we also know, and this, if there's some adults in the audience, and we know we've got the integrators, we've got some commissioners in the audience, is actually, it's not just true for young people moving to adult services. This was some work commissioned by the Institute of Public Policy Research in 2014. They just looked at adults between the ages of 18 to old age, and their recommendations were that patients should be empowered. These are adult patients because it improves long-term outcomes and reduces costs to the NHS. And when you look at the recommendations that they make, actually, guys, they echo those that are being made in the transition service specifications, saying that actually we can use the same program. And certainly, I'm sure that this has formed the basis of the personalized care agenda that we showed earlier. And not only that, patient empowerment is key. These are the parliamentary groups that have been involved. This is one for, I think, HIV and TB, but you look at the diabetes one, the kidneys one, and guess what? They all say the same thing. So lots of money is being plowed into these documents. But again, patient empowerment and changing healthcare professionals' behavior is key as a central resources. And that will be a key theme throughout the rest of the day. So again, really, really important for high quality, sustainable healthcare globally, not just locally or nationally. And it's about working together. And then coming full circle to Alan Culver's work from 2017, again, looking at patients with complex health needs. Patient empowerment is key. Meeting the adult team prior to moving to adult services. I mean, and sticking with the same team was important. I have to say, as a woman in her 30s, I'm being perhaps a little bit, hello, no laughs, guys. I've got beautiful skin. being a woman in, okay, let's say 50s, whatever, is I would want to see the same team if possible as well. I mean, that's not a great task, but sometimes it can be difficult. And making sure that you've got appropriate parental and peer involvement. And that support, as we said for Katana, needs to go on till at least the age of 25. Because as you can see here, the brain doesn't mature fully for these young people, and it's purple that shows that, until they're at least 25. And it doesn't mean that the parents need to be interfering, but it's just that they do need support from them or their peers as well. And certainly that's what Katana would have valued. And I know that my young people would have valued that. But also so that's one thing. And we need to be empowering our people from a really, really young age, because as you can see from this lovely infographic here, good behavior starts early. Patterns of behavior and habits start early. And we want to make sure that our young people are in a positive spiral of behavior, because the earlier you start it, the easier it is to put them into this behavior. If they're in a bad pattern and you try.
We've lost you.
Cannot hear you.
I'll start. Sorry, don't worry, guys. I am still here. The other screen has failed, but we have a backup because we are that flipping phenomenal. So yes, here we go.
I can be here.
I hope you can hear. Sound gone as well?
No, we can hear you perfectly, Alvin. Thank you.
Oh, lovely.
Oh.
Okay. So let me just bear with me, bear with, as Miranda would say. I never watch her, but my sister watches her and quotes her all the flipping time. So let me just do this. And look, no signs of panic because we are prepared. How lucky is that? I tell you, you guys are so lucky to have us here. I mean, the fact I'm talking rubbish is neither here nor there, but that's fine. Here we go. Here we go. But what I need to do is when I do share, I just need to make sure I share it in a proper way. So I'm just stopping sharing and I'm going to share again because I need to make sure that my optimized for video. Okay. Can you still see my screen, guys? Okay, let me just see. So we're talking here and we'll play from there. Oh, flipping out.
Perfect.
Okay, good. So let's get cracking. Lucky we've got extra time to go into coffee breaks because we're virtual. So guys, as I was saying, make sure we need to start early. And certainly I have got kids as young as 7 on kidney transplant medication that can already tell me what their medications are for and which ones stop them rejecting their medication, which ones stop them rejecting their we're going back to that one. I tell you, he's making my life difficult. Yeah, for video clips.
It's still running.
Oh, marvelous, perfect. Okay, guys, I'm back. Can you still hear me? Can you see me? Oh, yeah, look at this, calm. It's fine. And that's what we need to do because we're going to help young people, and I know we're going to make a difference. Yeah, so that's important. Let me just get rid of this. Okay, so good. So the positive spirals, and do you know what? The young people, even at 5, 6, or 7, if they can tell you what the kidneys do, they love being involved. And you get them started at a young age, they will start taking responsibility as well. No, it doesn't want to move on. Now I am getting cross. I mean, I could add a little, but I've just lost the will, guys. Now you can. Is it working? Shall we see? No, I know that's working. It's not moving on. Oh, it is moving on. Obviously, I don't know how to use a clicker, guys. Okay, so we want to make sure we get these good patterns of behavior started early. We want to empower our patients. That's what all. You know, we've spoken about the issues and we've spoken about the importance of this. And this is what, for the adults in the audience, we've got the Ready, Steady, Go and Hello programs. And you think, well, what is it? It's a holistic generic program that empowers patients and carers, and it works from cradle to grave. We started it as a transition program for young people moving from pediatrics to adults. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But what we found was that when our patient with learning disabilities moved to adult services, the comment from the adult team was, wow, your patient with learning disabilities knows more than our patients that haven't got learning disabilities. And I said, well, that's a really poor reflection on you guys, but in a lovely way, guys. I was gentle because it has to be positive. And we said, why don't we adapt the Ready, Steady, Go program for use in adult services since the issues are the same? So that's what we did. And it wasn't just in Southampton. We worked with people in the north and south of England, and we worked with patient groups and across subspecialties. And the Hello to Adults program came into being. But then what we also knew was that actually when parents have a child diagnosed with a long-term condition, it is overwhelming. And they also need empowerment. So we adapted this with parents and patient groups and came up with a Hello to Children Services program. And what we do is through a series of questionnaires, these are the topics that are covered. And the questionnaires are there, not as a checklist, but to open up discussion. So it's about knowing about their condition. It's about knowing who to contact for help and what their medication is and what their long-term outcomes are. It's also making sure that they've got a voice and are able to speak up for themselves and being involved in shared decision-making. And guys, this document, we created Ready, Steady, Go in about 2011, 2012. So we were already talking about shared decision-making and Ask 3 questions at that stage, and really, really important, and trying to get the young person to be seen on their own in clinic, which is something that Katana said as well. And we know it's important, and I'll be talking about shared decision-making soon, because we know that if patients are involved in decisions about themselves, and they're much more likely to adhere to them as well. And the Ask 3 questions is key, which is what are my choices, what's good and bad about each choice, and who can help me make a decision that's right for me. And that's Evan and his mum giving it the big thumbs up. So we also talk about sex, drugs, and we all talk about healthy lifestyle and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And guys, we are going to talk a little bit about sex here. How lucky are you? Because it's not something I usually do, she says. And the reason I'm talking about sex is a question here there's a question here, certainly on the orange questionnaire here, and it runs throughout the program. There's a question that says, I know the impact of my condition and medication on pregnancy and parenting. So what I wanted to point out with that question is it's a really broad question, and all these questions are broad so that we as the healthcare professionals can home in on the bits that are relevant to the patient and the young person. So that would, for me, so that particular question, I can talk about the inheritance pattern of particular conditions. I can talk about some of the medications that the young girls are on, like enalapril or MMF, has to be stopped. Otherwise, it damages the baby's kidneys or causes deformities. I can talk to, and I'm going to give you a couple of sexual examples. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's often a very difficult topic to bring up, and patients don't always bring it up. So it's so like the 16, 17-year-old boy that's got a kidney condition, and we know that with that you can get retrograde ejaculation, which means that that they don't produce semen. So I said, oh, I'll call him Bob for confidentiality. Bob, I said, are you masturbating now? He's going, yeah, Dr. Nagra, I am. I said, well, I go, is it dry? And he goes, yeah, it's dry. I said, well, how do you know that's an issue? And he goes, oh, because my friends have been talking about dumping their load for the last 2 years, and I haven't been doing that. And I said, yeah, but you see my 2 male colleagues as well. I said, why haven't you brought it up before? And he goes, well, it's because I know you better, Dr. Nagra. It's not because he knows me better. It's because I asked the question. And then sometimes that's just the kidney one. And then to say sometimes, one of the clinical nurse specialists for haemophilia said, actually, that's great. I can talk about the inheritance pattern and also talk about, and I didn't know this was an issue, but maybe you do, but I know this now, that the sexual positions that are safe to practice in haemophilia so you don't get hurt and be traumatized. I said, oh, well, that's good. That makes it less embarrassing. She goes, no, it doesn't make it less embarrassing, but it allows me to ask the question. And sometimes patients don't know what they don't know, such as a cystic fibrosis boy who's 16, came across this question. Parents are both GPs, and he couldn't have children naturally. It's been discussed in the past, but wasn't of interest to him. He came to this question and ticked the box and goes, promise I won't get pregnant. Saw the look of horror on the nurses' faces when they realized he wasn't aware of this. And certainly the next time he came, he knew everything about it because they addressed it. But much better for him to find that in pediatric services than the 28-year-old man who finds out that he can't have children naturally because of his cystic fibrosis, hasn't been supported, and is very, very angry. And sometimes patients, allows patients to ask questions that are unexpected that we as healthcare professionals wouldn't answer. Like the girl with epilepsy, the epilepsy nurse said, who I'm going to say is 17. She may have been younger, but let's say 17 because it sits better with me. And she goes, great. She goes, if I feel a fit coming on when I'm giving my boyfriend a blowjob, what do I do? And you can just imagine the clamping of the teeth there. The nurse goes, yeah, maybe take it out of your mouth and maybe have a safe word and maybe talk about this. And certainly when I've given this talk before, it's not unique to this particular epilepsy nurse, it's across the board. So this is something that's being covered. So that shows that actually it allows us to ask the difficult questions and also allows the parents and patients to ask questions that we wouldn't think about. We also make sure we talk about the future and they have realistic goals. So if they're going into the future, it's, you know, I'm in Southampton. I know many of our patients can't join the armed forces because they won't be, you know, they'll fail the medical. And much better to break their hearts at 11 than at 18, because when they're 18 and you do it, they'll go off the rails. And certainly I've told 7 and 8-year-olds they can't join the army. And I saw one the other day, bless him, and his little eyes just welled up, and it breaks your heart. But at least he's in a much better place because they can think of alternatives. We talk about psychosocial issues in this. You know, are you, you know, one is, do you like the way you look? The medication can have issues. And I know that Dean is going to be talking about body image later. And there's a question that says, I am happy with life. And you think, wow, what a bit of a trite question. But actually, that really does open up loads of things. We've had young people go, yeah, everything's fine. Happy with life? Actually, I'm not happy with life. I've got a shit life. I'm never going to have a girlfriend. I'm never going to leave home. This is just awful. I've got scars all over my body. But we've had this one with a patient. And by putting the right support in place, that young man went to uni, did nursing, is in a loving relationship, and heard me talk years later. And he goes, yeah, I didn't realize it was Ready, Steady, Go. He goes, I know that's me you're talking about. And yeah, it did make a difference. And making sure that they understand the concept of transition. And when you say transition, it's about patient empowerment. I say to my young people, it's not about moving to adult services. It's about you getting the knowledge and skills. So when you leave me at 18, I don't need to worry about you because you'll have all the skills and your parents can take a back seat, which is really important. And they like that. If you say it's about moving to adult services, they're not going to be interested and they'll say they don't want to do it. Now, for those with, we often get asked, so that's what Ready, Steady, Go is, how it works. And what we've done is we've also got an easy read version for patients with learning disabilities. And certainly the teenagers that haven't got learning disabilities likes this because it's slightly more conversational. The same number of questions because all these issues need addressing. And we've done it with the Foundation for People with Learning Disabilities and all these other groups as well, and patients as well. And we've got a digital audio version that if we've got it, I'll put it into the chat later and you guys can have a test of it and we can see where that goes. And it's also part of something called a patient-owned electronic record. I'm not saying the digital version will be available for everybody, and it's really, really exciting and will be used across the country. And we will talk about digitalization later on. I'll touch upon it. Okay. So that tells you what the Ready, Steady, Go program is and how you work through it. And you think, well, what age do you start? Well, we start at the age of 11. 16 is too late, and I'll show you some data later about that. Because what we know is if you start earlier, that gives them more knowledge, it gives them time to gain these knowledge and skills. Those that start at 11 know more than those that start at 14, who know more than those that started at 17. And that was some data from Janet McDonough. And also, then you can incorporate it into your everyday clinic. There's no reason why you can't do that. So that is where Ready, Steady goes, and that is how we do it. And I'm going to let you listen to some patient voices, because I think the patient voices describe it really, really well. At least I'm hoping we're going to let you listen to some patient voices. Okay, I might need to come out of this. James, can I just, okay, I wanted to share the videos and I do know that they share. Here we go. Am I sharing? Yeah. So I'd probably just have to do it this way. I'm really sorry.
You're not sharing. You enable this out. You're not sharing.
Well, I'll just, okay. Sorry, guys. It's because I'm using somebody else's computer and our usual technical stuff hasn't worked. I need to share the sound as well.
Do they not just play this in the slide?
No, obviously not this time around, no. Usually it does. So if we just do that, share this. If you share the slide, if you share my PowerPoint, make sure it's optimized for video, optimized for the clip, that's perfect. We'll do that. And then we can just share. No, it does, sorry. Oh, how bizarre. Oh, here we are.
I'm Maria. I was first diagnosed with
Is it
kidney
showing, guys,
failure when
the
I was
audio?
10. I was really scared and worried at that point, but later on, thanks to Ready Steady Go program, I later found out that it's called HUS, and I was able to understand what my condition is and what the symptoms are, and I can look for that in the future, and it's all thanks to Ready Steady Go program. I was introduced to Ready Steady Go program by having a leaflet, an information leaflet, and then my next appointment I had the Getting Ready questionnaire, which is the red one, and then years later I had the amber, which was the Getting Steady, and then a couple of years later I had the green questionnaire, which was the go, and we covered all the questions, making sure that I actually knew them instead of just blagging my way through.
So when
And I'm also going to let you listen to Sam's mum as well. Here we go.
I'm mum to Sam and Dylan, who's his twin brother, who are 14. Both boys are on the Ready Steady Bro programme, which I am actually doing for them because they're not able to advocate for themselves, therefore I'm doing it as their parent. We are delighted to be on the Ready Steady Go programme as a family, myself, the boys and my husband. We're gaining the skills and knowledge to move forward into adult services, and we know that when they do eventually go into adult services, we will have the skills and the knowledge to manage and care for their conditions and the boys themselves.
Okay, so guys, I think really, really powerful patient voices there. And let me just go back to the big screen again. And if you can't hear, just shout out, yeah? Let me have a look. Okay. Am I doing? Yeah, perfect. So really, really powerful voices. And that's it. They're only snippets from the patient voices on readysteadygo.net. It's a 6-minute video, and this is what changes hearts and minds. When the patients know it's about transition, they don't want to do it, but when they see the whole video, they really, really, the parents and the young people are keen to go on it. And so do watch that, because that was only a snippet, and my voice will not change it, but certainly the video itself will. Now, this just talks about what Maria said, about how you move through the program. And I'm just going to say how I do it. So I give them the information leaflet and I signpost them to the video. And when they next come, I give them the Ready Steady Go, sorry, the Ready questionnaire. And what I say is, next time you come, complete the questionnaire, and you either give it to them at the beginning or the end. And I said, we have got digital forms now. If you give it to them to take away, to do at home, to send it back in, guys, it does not happen. Invariably, not many of them do send it back. And that's the same with most questionnaires. And what it does is it covers the issues in small bite-sized pieces. I know I cover it all anyway, but it's there to open up discussion, and the patients and the parents and everybody know what's going to be expected. I introduce them to the concept of Ask 3 questions, and also, as Kirtana was saying, getting them used to being seen on their own for a few minutes, because the parents can't help but wanting to talk about the, talk on behalf of the young people. But I don't see them without warning them. I'll say, next time you come to see me, I'm going to see you. I'm just going to ask you, why do I see you? You say your kidneys, or I might ask you about your medication. And they say, I said, and I'll see you for a couple of minutes, and the mum and dad can come in, and obviously we'll get both versions of events, because young people can say one thing and parents can give a different story, and it's important to hear both as well. I write the letters to the young person from the age of 11, that includes the MDT, so they get copied in. MDT gets copied in, and the young person gets the letters. And I expand on complicated words. So I'll say, it was lovely to see you. I'm glad that you've got too much protein in the urine, open brackets, this is called proteinuria, and there's a risk of getting high blood pressure, open brackets, this is called hypertension. So then knowing them, they know the complicated words that might be in their letters and other people use, but they also know what it means as well. And we agree goals and we write them in there so that they can look at it and reflect back on it. A couple of years down the line, I'll check in with the steady question and what the questionnaires do.
Sorry, can you just stop talking a minute?
The first one it goes, I can describe my condition in the red, and the orange is I know that I understand the words, terms, and procedures relevant to my condition. And green, I'm confident in the management of my condition. And it's the green that we actually get the adult teams involved, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And also we've got the when they go to adult services, they complete the blue questionnaire, and the blue questionnaire echoes that in the green questionnaire. And it's just to make sure that knowledge and skills are maintained and they continue.
There's someone who
Okay. So what we would say is that sure that knowledge and skills are
Arvin.
maintained and new issues come on board. So pregnancy won't be very big on
Arvin.
their agenda at the age of
I
11
can't
or
hear
12.
you. Please
But it
stop.
will,
Sorry.
or 16, 17, but it will be in their 20s, and making sure that new issues are addressed as they get older as well. And certainly the adults that have come across this program really love it. For those patients with learning disabilities, they do as much as they're able. And if they can just say, you know, I've got a kidney condition, I've got this one medication, that is great success. And the patient, the parent will work through that, the questionnaire on their behalf. And for
Oh,
carers in question. Sorry, somebody needs muting. I'm sorry. I don't know who it is. We have to do that. Just wait. Oh, it's been done. Okay, lovely. And then for the parent and carers also have a questionnaire that they can complete. Okay. And do you know what, James? Every time.
I think Eva was saying, can we circle back for 5 minutes? The background noise was so bad. A lot of the last 5 minutes hasn't been heard.
Is that the slide that do you want me to just go back to this slide or the video?
Maybe this is like,
Okay. Oh, guys. Okay, I'm sorry about that, guys. So you get to hear my lovely voice again. I mean, gosh, I thought that would be my husband's worst nightmare, by the way, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, so this is just a slide that summarizes what Maria says on that video. And I just talked about how I introduced the program to people. And there is a guide that I'll link you to that talks you through introducing Ready, Steady, Go in your own practice. There's been some updates since then, but this gives you the general gist of it. So the young person, when they're 10, I'm going to say, oh, next time I see you, I'm going to start you on the Ready, Steady, Go program. And here's a leaflet, and I'll do that at 11 as well. And I give them the leaflet, but I signpost them to the video because the video is really, really powerful. When they next come to see me, I will give them the red questionnaire. And I ask them to complete it either at the beginning of clinic or at the end of clinic. I don't go through it because I know I'm going to address all those issues over the coming year or 2 years. And we address the issues in small bite-sized pieces. I introduce them to the idea of ask 3 questions and confidentiality. And I don't see them on their own initially. But what I do is say that, you know, if I know them very well, I'll say, next time I see you, Josh, you know, I'm going to see you on your own for a couple of minutes so that then you can just tell me, why do I see you? And you can just say, I see you for my kidneys, Dr. Nagra, or whatever. Or you can just tell me the name of your medication, but I tell them what I'm going to ask them so they'll know that for next time. And then parents also come in. And I say it's about you getting used to being, talking on your own, which is important. I write my letters to the young person, which is really, really key from the age of 11, and copying the parents and the rest of the MDT. And I'll say to them things like, you know, it was lovely to see you. I'm so pleased that you know that you've got too much protein in your urine, open brackets, this is called proteinuria, and that there's a risk of developing high blood pressure, open brackets, called hypertension. I actually also put in agree goals that they need to achieve for the next time, and they're written there. And anything that I want the GP to do, I will say something. And I know that Michael Mullahan, when we were speaking yesterday, and GPs that I've spoken to find this very helpful, is, you know, I would like you to take your first urine of the morning to the GP so it can be sent for this. If this or this happens, then further specimens will need to be sent. Your GP is copied into this letter so that they're aware. And then I just write a little note to the GP at the bottom, and making sure that you, as the patient and the young person, contact the GP because they're so overwhelmed with work as well. We check in a couple of years down the line with the orange and the green. And with the orange, it just goes to show that the questions just get a little bit more complex as you work through the program. So in red, it goes, I know about my condition. In orange, it talks about, I know the words, terms, and procedures relevant to my condition. And in green, it talks about the I'm confident in the management of my condition. And that's where they usually get introduced to the adult team. And we're going to talk about a 16+ pathway later as well. And all that will be on there. So I'll leave that for later on in the day, because that is somewhere that you can audit what you're doing, and there's outcome measures for that. When they go to the adult service, certainly I go to the first adult clinic usually, but they fill in the hello questionnaire, which is important because it follows on from the green. It's almost identical with a few adaptations for adults, and it makes sure that the holistic program continues in adult services. And they check in every few years to make sure that knowledge and skills are maintained and new issues are addressed. Pregnancy isn't going to be very big on, hopefully not very big on someone's agenda at 17, 18, but is on somebody's agenda at 20, 20, well, I would say to my children 30, but in their mid to late 20s is fine. Anybody with learning disabilities we've already talked about. The young person does as much as they're able, with the adults doing more if needed, with the parents being their advocates and finishing the rest of it off. And there's a parent and carer questionnaire as well. So that summarizes how we work through the slide. James, it's got stuck again. Oh, no, it's fine. No, it's fine. I'm back. So you think, well, okay, so that's how we do Ready, Steady, Go. But actually, does it really do what it says on the tin? What was the feedback from healthcare professionals, patients and carers? Actually, they loved it. It does what it says on the tin, but they say there were time issues. What people were trying to do was do the whole thing in one go at go. And if you do that, it's not going to happen. It's not possible. They also said, what was the relevance of some of the questions? But as you can see, sometimes patients don't know what they don't know. And I think we've covered the learning disabilities, the parity of esteem. You have the same questions, but things like with the cognitive patients, you have to introduce it sensitively. And I would say to them, look, I know that there's a question here saying the impact of my condition of pregnancy and parenting. I know that your child isn't going to be able to have children, but it's just the fact that there will be sexual urges and things that need to be done. So it's to look at it that way. And what is your child going to do? What am I going to do after school? That is talking about, making sure that you've still got your healthcare packages in, and if they've got residential support, how is that going to continue into adult services? So we're saying, and we always say to the patients, it's about parity of esteem, and they would prefer those questions to be in there, so nothing is forgotten. We've got an adult colleague here. For the interest of time, I'm not going to play the video, but for those that want it, I can share it. She says she loves Ready, Steady, Go, really loves the fact that the young people are empowered and that they know more than the adult patients, and wants to use the Hello program, and is using the Hello program in adult services de novo. And when we spoke at an NHS England Expo meeting years ago, there was somebody who was 50 adults in the audience that had been diagnosed with mental health issues, and also one with a transplant, who said, I wish this had been around when I was diagnosed. It would have made a huge difference to my life. So again, showing that you can use that same program, and we should be encouraging our adult colleagues to do it. And you can do a lot of it in a 15-minute consultation, but does it make a difference? It's all well and good doing it. Has it made any difference to those stats? Well, yeah, when you look at this is the diabetes group. They had a large population that they had to move to adult services. And what they found was actually when they had no transition, their data echoed the data from 2002. But when they did Ready, Steady, Go, only doing Go alone, actually, they had an increase in the number attending adult services 2 years after transfer. And they halved their diabetes-related hospital admissions, but their HbA1cs didn't improve because the good practice just came in too late. But when they did it, as advised, between the ages of 11 and 12, all that information, all that data and stats improved even further. And not only that, the HbA1cs improved as well. And the diabetes-related hospital admissions in pediatric services also reduced. It's not Ready, Steady, Go on its own. They used the Ready, Steady, Go framework to develop an education package that they share with their patients, and all the MDT stay on message, so nothing is missed. So really, really important there. And the education packages and your own checklist for your own specialties makes it disease specific, but you use the same program with the patients. There is something that's come up here that, this was a meta-analysis in 2019 about what do patients and healthcare professionals say. This is in 2019, and this echoes a lot of what Kirsten has said earlier, that they don't feel prepared. They don't feel that they're given a choice about which adult service they go to, and having that choice, and even when there is no choice, is really important, as long as it's explained to them and they've got no trust in the adult service. And then the adults say, they're not prepared, funnily enough. We mollycoddle them. Obviously, they didn't use the word mollycoddle, but that's what we've said. They're too involved, and they're worried about looking after conditions that they don't know anything about. And certainly, that's where the 16+ pathway will come in, and Kay will be talking about that at the end of the day, okay? And these are some of and it's called the Moving On Up Together 16+ pathway, and we'll talk about buddying up systems and sharing videos of the adult team. So this, I'm coming to my last few slides, and we'll have a little bit of a break before we talk about the shared decision-making stuff. So it's been adopted across the UK. And you say, oh, but we're doing it, but we're not on there. Guys, I can only waste so much time putting the dots on there. It was too busy, but it's across the 4 nations. And there was some work done in 2017 looking at renal units that were using a transition tool, and they were using Ready, Steady, Go and Hello. It's been quoted as an example of best practice. There's a lot of interest in the international groups, and actually it's getting into all the international transition specifications. This is cardiac, but it's in oncology, sickle cell, thalassemia, the works. So it's all out there as well. We've got a fantastic, and I hope that you guys want to be involved in this. You're passionate and there's no reason not to be. And it's for the MDT in pediatrics and adults. We've got a TIER collaborative team, and TIER stands for transition, where transition stands for patient empowerment. So it's from cradle to grave, innovation, education and research. And these are across the subspecialties and across age groups, and it's the MDT. And this group are translating the Ready, Steady, Go program so that it can be used within their own country. So there's one version, and it's about sharing best practice and resources as well. So if you're interested, do register or do email us at hello@readysteadygo.net. But there's more information on the website, and the versions are on there, the translated versions. So the key points to take away from this particular aspect of the talk: Ready, Steady, Go and Hello gives you a structured framework to empower your patients. Try and stick with the same adult team if possible. Peer and family support is really important. We cohort our young patients, and certainly in adult services, so you see them at the beginning of the clinic, or in the same clinic if possible. So it's not adding a burden to the adult service. So it's just thinking outside the box, so you can then make it a bit more young person friendly. And link back to the adult team, you need to have communication with the adult team so they can contact you if they've got issues, especially with complicated problems. And we'll talk about that in the 16+ pathway. And if they've got psychosocial concerns, as shown before, really important that these are highlighted, and these patients need closer monitoring. And remember, that brain isn't completely developed till they're 25, so that risk-taking behavior continues. And it works across the subspecialties, across age groups. It's about empowering. Everybody understands the Ready, Steady, Go system. It's red, orange and green. And this is actually sustainable. Lots of projects are pump primed, and when the pump priming disappears, there's no sustainability. But the Ready, Steady, Go is sustainable. It was made with no money, with just an enthusiastic bunch of people, and it's now becoming the international program. So you can do a lot just by thinking outside the box and being an enthusiastic bunch of people, and you get that continuity from pediatrics to adults. And I do believe, and I hope you agree, that it does deliver patient empowerment, shared transition, and higher quality sustainable healthcare. And this is the article, and we'll share it in the chat as well. It's free to download, about how you can do Ready, Steady, Go in your own practice. And all these resources are over there as well, okay? And if you're interested in being part of the collaborative, do email at readysteadygo.net. Aren't we very friendly? So thank you. I'm going to stop there, and then we'll talk about shared decision making after. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen in case there's any questions. Kath.
Arvin, there are loads of questions in the chat box. You've clearly generated an awful lot of thinking. The first question was related to the Ready, Steady, Go article that you shared initially. Can you possibly post the link to that? I think it was highlighted as one of the 11 best transition programs, and it was probably around about 2014. So I don't know as to whether you've got that link for us.
Yeah, that was, I think that was done at a talk. I'll try and find that, but that was done at a transitional study day in Lausanne, and they said it was voted the best too. I'll see if I can find that information.
Fantastic.
But if I can't, I apologize. That is going back, almost a decade, guys. I've got an inbox that is up to there, but we'll find it. Yeah.
Brilliant. And the other discussion that's been going on in the chat, is with regard to children with special educational needs and disabilities and learning disabilities. And some colleagues have rightly highlighted Ready, Steady, Go is a great framework, but it does need to be personalised. And so it needs to be flexible. And we just wondered as to whether there were any thoughts around working with that particular cohort group that you might like to actually reflect on. Lots of positivity about writing directly to children and young people as well. And the other question that's coming up in the chat box as well relates to, if you've got a young person who, say, is crash landing into children's services at, say, 16, and you're still getting them ready to transition, do you actually go back to the very start of the process, or do you bring them in with RED? So any reflections?
Yeah. So let me see. So I'll do, you're going to have to remind me of a couple of them. So let's do the learning disabilities one first. So the learning disabilities and the special educational needs. We've got an audio visual version one for that. And we've done that with the Foundation for People with Learning Disabilities and lots of patients with Downs. Certainly we had our Downs patient group were involved with that. And we also did it with the 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds, also looked at the easy read version. So that's why we're happy with what we've done there. And as you know, with those with learning disabilities, they'll also be supported through the program usually. Some of them will be supported with their parents and their carers as well. So I think it does meet that. You can't get perfection. And if you wait for perfection, you'll be failing this group. And you have to, I mean, other than me and you, Kath, perfection personified, perfection does not exist. Yeah, the group agrees with that. So I think we have to be realistic in what we can do, and we're doing all we can. And also, we did that with the palliative care group with the easy read version as well. So I don't think there's much more that we can do with that, but it's making sure that when we're doing resources and we're empowering them, that we're using the right language, and health literacy will come into that. Yeah. So hopefully that's answered that question. If anybody does want some more information on that, please do email me. I'm happy to do that outside for the interest of time. And then what was the other one? The other one was
in relation to young people who might actually crash land into paediatric services at say 16 and they need to begin their transition.
With the crash landers, no, and this we do cover in the 16+ pathway, but it's something that we've documented as. No, I would say I like to always start them on orange, because it goes into, I know the words, terms and procedures relevant to my condition. Yeah, but you don't have to, you can start at the beginning depending on how overwhelmed they are, but you can say, this is what we're going to get you through, but your condition is this. So if you do that, you can go through it very, very quickly. You know, you can do it in a year's time. So I've had 16, 17-year-olds. I start them on the orange one and then just go straight through to the go when they're ready, but you can do it very quickly. I wouldn't go straight through to go, but sometimes you'll assess the patients, you'll see what they're like, you'll see how overwhelmed they are. So there's no one right way of doing it, but I would certainly say at least with the steady, but possibly with the red if you need to. You don't want to overwhelm them.
Smashing. Arvin, I'm very aware there are still more questions in the chat box, but also aware that people will need a coffee and a loo break before you actually move on. So perhaps we can come back to those questions later, if that's okay.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Kath, I've forgotten. I haven't got the program in front of me. What time is the coffee break?
Well, we were meant to be breaking at 11 and we're due back at 11:30.
Okay, so guys, why don't we, I can do the shared decision-making bit, but I think, why don't we have a 10-minute, do you think 10 minutes is all right? Or is that not long enough for you guys to make teas and coffees? And you do know that you don't have to sit addressed to the screen. You are allowed to leave. I'm not monitoring that, even though I pretend I can from Zoom, because people sometimes say that. Yeah, start on, people are saying this, Barbara says she starts on orange for late effects. So that is good and it works. Oh, and people are saying yes to 10 minutes. So guys, why don't we do 10 minutes? And what we'll probably do with the talks is I will try and keep the shared decision-making bit short. And then we can probably go a little bit into the lunch break, because I don't think you need 40 minutes. And guys, it's about learning, and sharing is caring. So we are going to share some of the lunch break between us, because that's the kind of people we are. One for all and all for one, guys. 10-minute break, off you go, and then we start. All right. Thank you, Kath. Really appreciate it. And thanks for bearing with us with the technical issues. Yep, brilliant. Thank you.